Yeah. So as Dr. Leena has already introduced me myself, so I would be directly jumping into the content of my today's presentation as a keynote speaker for the Sustainable Development Goal 11. My presentation would be covering a little bit about shelter, how it is its basic need, and the introduction to the SDG 11 and how housing is a collaborative framework. Plus, I will be sharing some findings from my PhD study, which includes the appraisal of low-income housing projects in Punjab, and then I will be presenting the sustainable model from the past in the context of low-income housing delivery. So, to begin with, we all know that the world is all about change. Change is the only thing that is constant, and our cities are changing, and this is the biggest reality which we cannot deny. And if you see the both images, you can see this is an image of a Manhattan, which was, when humans were not there, it was very green. But when the humans, started to living there, and urbanization was happened rapidly, so we see a lot of concrete blocks in high volumes spreading over the cityscape. So we all know this that more than 50% of our global population lives in urban areas, and because of this we have 70% global energy emissions as well. So it is very important that we should be planning that our development and our urbanization should not put the sustainability notion at the at the extent people started suffering from it rather than considering it as a blessing. uh, as we all know, this is needs, everyone needs shelter. Besides shelter, other basic needs involve food, water, and clothing. And why shelter? Out of all of this, why shelter is the only one that covering all of this basic needs? Because in a home you need water, you have a washroom. In a home you have a kitchen where you prepare meals for yourself. You have a laundry area where you wash your clothes and you sleep in. You live in. You have a living room. So this is very important, and it is going to define your health, your lifestyle, in terms of social, economic, cultural, and physical attributes. It defines your identity and it defines your well-being. So it is very important that shelter must be provided to every income group, regardless it is low, middle, or urban poor. So what is SDG 11? SDG 11 is a very broadened terminology because in sustainable cities and communities, it covers seven basic components. Number one is safe and affordable housing. Second is affordable and sustainable transport systems. Third is inclusive and sustainable urbanization. Fourth is protecting the world's cultural and natural heritage. Fifth is reducing the adverse effects of natural disasters. Sixth is to reduce the environmental impact of cities. And seventh is to provide safe access to safe and green public spaces. So I will be going in detail about the goal number one, sub goal one, that is safe and affordable housing in context of Pakistan. So if we see our overall profile of Pakistan, its current population is now it will be around more than 180 million, and there is an increase of 33% in Pakistan's total population every year. And it is predicted that it is going to reach 380 million by 2050. How is housing is being delivered and how it is being provided to, and how it is being produced? It is a collaborative framework. It takes time, it takes funding, it takes planning, and it takes commitment from many groups, which involves developers, government authorities, builders, planners, architects, banks. Every sector is involved in the production of a housing project. According to Habitat 3, which introduced the new urban agenda, and it says that housing should enhance the capital formation, income, employment generation, savings, and it must contribute to the driving sustainable and economic transformation at all levels. It involves national, subnational, and local levels. So it's in the notion of sustainability, it should not leave behind one particular aspect. It should involve all the income groups from the society, and it's a collaborative framework. And if we work together for the low income housing, especially making it affordable to the low income groups, then it can be easily achieved. So I will be providing the post occupancy evaluation of low income housing projects in the Punjab. One is from Lahore, that is Ashiana housing project, and one is from Faisalabad city, which is the second largest city of Punjab. And then I will be presenting the model of sustainable delivery of low income housing. So what criteria I put on to appraise the low income housing projects? First, I define some parameters which are similar in their nature, so I can cross check uh, what has been, what is the model being adopted in the provincial level or in the local level for the low income housing delivery. So first, the housing unit size is very important. It should not be more than 3 malla. So you can say that it is 1 malla is equal to 225 square feet. So you can divide yours, multiply. Then the project execution time period is very important. It must be executed within the last decade, that is 2000 to 2020. And then the ownership, there must be a variety. One must be from the ownership uh, relates from the level of public, private, and social enterprises, which is from the NGOs. So the two projects, one is from public social housing, you can see in the general terminology, and one is from the NGO based housing project. Then an eligibility criteria was kept another parameter, that the applicants which were included as eligible to apply for the housing unit were similar in their nature. Maybe their monthly installment and their monthly income should match. Last and not the least is the location parameter, that the project is the site location of the project must match with each other. That is, it should not be within the center of the city, because we don't see any project. So I would like to have the similarity in the selection of both projects, and these both projects were in this outer area of the city. So first of my appraisal revolves around the application process, which is about the eligibility criteria, application process, and motivation for applying, and possession and ownership. So if we see the eligibility criteria, if we are going to start planning for the low income housing projects or affordable housing, because we relate the affordable most commonly with the low income group or urban group, because for them affordability is kind of difficult to manage. So what difficulties they have faced during this process? Like they have down payment, they found the down payment was much higher in one of the project, and they also find out that monthly installment was also higher. Like if they are still living on the rental, then they are going to have manage the two installment at the same time. One is the monthly installment for the future housing unit, and one is the current rental amount which they are have to manage for the house they are living in. First, they also find it that the housing cost unit is not within the affordability. The government authorities have not planned it very well, and they must have did a more extensive financial analysis of the low income group, so that the cost of the housing project must come in within the affordability domain. So this is some of the properties that they talked about during the focus group discussions with the residents of these projects. Then they also find difficulties while applying for the project. Number one was the attitude of the government official was not a comfortable one, and they were more oriented towards the rent seeking, and Because of this, they find it difficulty in dealing with the officials, because every time, without bribe, they are not going to facilitate them. So this was the culture which was, highlighted by them in the especially in the case of public housing project. Then income verification process, they also find it very difficult, because uh, the documentation was not proper, and the data banks of, of the process of the applicants was not there, due to the whole system is not being digitalized, so it again delayed the project. And in some cases, they further asked the applicants to provide the legal guarantee. Then I asked them also that what motivated them to apply for this project, if they were already living in a slum or squatter. So number one, they some of the participants said that they were shifting from another city, and they were planning to shift to Lahore. So they found it, within the little bit affordability, although it was difficult for them to match, but that was the only option for them. Then they also mentioned about that their family size was increasing, and they wanted to move into a bigger home as compared to one room which they were living already. Then closeness and proximity to their business locations or employment also mentioned. And so since the commercialization of the housing projects is so much, that this was the only project that they consider it within their affordability, although it was difficult for manage them, but this is was the only option for them. Then I also asked about them that how what were the experience regarding, when they were actually getting the possession and ownership of the plot, when they are done with the uh, uh, payment and installments and everything. So in case of public housing project, which was in Lahore, Ashana housing project, they mentioned about that they delayed the construction, and because of some political conflicts. And then they didn't transfer the letter, they didn't transfer the property yet into the name of the applicant. And they are just lingering, and they are just delaying it furthermore. But in the case of the project which was from the NGO in another city, the good thing was this, that applicants were immediately giving the possession right after they made the down payment. So it was very convenient for them to avoid the another amount that they were paying already for the rental amount, rental, and then they are going to move in with their family. Number two is then I asked them that what is the difference they have feel about living in currently in their own house without the freedom from paying the rental. And so they, number one, said about the monthly rent, that they are not worried about to pay every on the first of every month. They don't have to get worried that they have to pay the rent. Then yes, there is other thing that they have feeling of that they own this house. And physical environment was also very much better as compared to the area that they were living before. Some were from the slums, some from the squatters, and some were living in another city. And Lahore is little bit better from the previous living with them. So in this case, more of both projects were similar in the experience. Then in case of the design of the housing unit, they also showed some responses in terms of site selection. They thought that it is very far away from the city center, that they don't have much facilities like good hospitals. So it is very important that you must plan the projects for the low income groups with in the where they have all the infrastructural facility and the health facilities within the area. Then they also talked about that the plot size, the size of the land, the plot which were given to them is also less. They promised a bigger area, but during the application process, they changed the area in a case of public housing. They also talked about that they must have gone into the heights, like rather than just one story house. They must have gone into the 3 or 4 heights. And then they also told about the outdoor space, that the space which was given out in the passages can be used inside the house so that the rooms can be bigger. So then they also felt that infrastructure and social facilities were not much there in case of public housing, because it is from the a political party which was in charge. So they felt that they promised different facility, and they didn't execute it in reality after they have shifted over there. So this was one of their concerns. And parks and hospitals are not well managed, they mentioned. Then in case of social enterprise project which was in Faisalabad, they said that there is no availability of natural gas. Because of that, they have to keep on the artificial cylinders to keep going with the daily activities of cooking and other things. Again, in case of the construction quality, they didn't feel much satisfied. They felt that the poor building materials has been used and the wall finishes are not achieved in a well manner. Also, they find out that to reduce the cost of the unit, they shorten down the ceiling height. So this is some of the visuals that I took from the sites of the project. This is from the Safia Homes, Faisalabad. The community, environment was good over there, because they have a park of, after every in every block, and you can see which some of the participants talked about that it must have gone into three and four heights rather than on just one story. Then they were not participants of Ashana Public Housing in Lahore. They were not happy about the park facility. They felt that it is not well managed, and the swings and other facilities are not uh, well maintained, and you can see from the image as well. So this is another image of the community park. So this was the point that they were talking about, that the outdoor area which they have given for the passage, they used it for the domestic use by self-covering itself and making this a part of their indoor environment in case of Lahore, which was the public project. In case of the Safia Homes, Faisalabad, their point also mentioned the same, that the front and the back passage must have utilized inside the home to make the bigger rooms. And they also pointed out about the central location of the kitchen, which going to make the other rooms hotter as well, because there is too much hot in Punjab, uh, like cities in Lahore and Faisalabad. So the construction quality, which I just mentioned before, that they said that this is not good enough, and you can see the wall cracks on all over the walls. And whenever you just little punch it, and you are see that the sand is start coming out of the line. In terms of the regulatory framework, both projects were saying that they felt that the state department which was managing the project in case of Ashana housing project in Lahore, there was lack of planning and VN, and they intended to win the political elections, and their purpose was not to really serve the low income groups. And again, when they are going to put a complaint to the site office, there is a delayed response. Then they also saw the activities going on, taking in the name of the house owner, and then letting someone in living as a rental, so that you can make a profit. So and making the false narratives. So this was the appraisal of the projects which I have done. Now I will be sharing a review of sustainable model of low income housing. It has been done previously and it can be achievable. We just need to work on the intelligent planning just while going into the execution phase, and it is achievable, and it has achieved in the past, but we don't I don't know, the intention to implement is not there in third world countries or whatever, but it has been done, and I'm very happy to share this model, Khuda Ki Basti, from Pakistan, which was done in 1980, late 1990, by the Tasneem Ahmed Siddiqui. So this sustainable model provides shelter to the extreme urban poor. And what people say, this was, making the beneficiary of the project at the center of the project planning, and where people, the residents, are going to pool their resources, and then they are going to build themselves their housing units so that they can, share the cost. And the good point of this model was that the homeless people were given immediate possession against the small down payment, and it was affordable to them. You can see a bigger aerial view of that project, and it has been done 3 decades ago, when there was not much notions about sustainability, and but intelligent planning can let you to do this. So, what about the eligibility criteria that they have, efficiently designed? That their applicants must have no property, and they must be the actual residents. So, if you are selected, you have to make sure that you are going to live in that area, and no space for the false applicants. And another good thing that they made sure that only head of the families are coming for the application, to show the serious attitude towards getting a possession of the housing unit. And they also made sure that their area is not less than 120 square feet. So the good point is that because the residents were actively involved in the construction of their own housing units, so they built their water and sanitation systems themselves. And and then the administration of the project was so much sincere to this project that they made sure made collaborations with the NGOs and government sector, so that they can provide other allied facilities like clinics, schools, transportation systems. And further they also train the residents that how they can build improve their building skills. So some of the success factors which I want to show over there, that because it was a raw government land, so it was affordable. And then when they again, after the land cost, when they worked on the construction costs, so they get to know that maybe it not be um, affordable by the residents. So they made them available without any constructed housing unit. They just gave them the land, so that it is very easy for them to construct the house with their own little amount, which they are payable, like 50 rupees per month for the time period of an 8 years. Then they also with the seeing the dedication and commitment of the residents to the projects, then the administration also acted well and made collaborations with the NGOs. And the good thing about this, that this scheme was not uh, made out of the out at these center of the out of these cities periphery, like I just mentioned about earlier of the projects in the Punjab. This was made within the city, a super highway, and this was made up part of a township, Gulshan-e Shehbaz. So it was occupation of the plots was seen as the major success factor of this project. And the good thing that is design was flexible, because the open land was there, so you can make changes and modifications, going on the feedback which we are getting from the expert teams and everything. And they also made the operation of the payments and applications a very comfortable one, by making it a one window affair. So you can see a flexible design. One unit is there, but it's a geometrical grid, conventional geometrical grid, and it was, you know, uh, giving them simpler. They were some basic plans were given to them, which were very similar, simple as compared to innovative, because they wanted, when you have nothing, you just want the shelter. So this is good. We should not be so much, excited that we, forget about the affordability factor of the applicants. So there were no restriction to the size, form, and height and materials, as well, and they were given, open end to build their own houses according to their own needs. Because being, famous architects and being famous planners and sitting in a air conditioned rooms, you are not never going to, imagine the housing needs of a low income group or an urban group. The only restriction they have, their own budget. Based on their budget, they can, choose the material. Sometimes wooden, cardboard shelter were made and based. Sometimes it was brick work and cement as well. So you can see some of them, you can see a different, construction techniques. Some is the brick and some is the precast beams over there. So these were some of the models were given to them: a cardboard house, a kacha brick house, and then the paka brick house, and some, kind of sketches of their outer look as well. But the good thing about this project that residents built themselves. So they have, made saving from the cost that they were going to pay to the laborers who are going to construct their house. So here is the last, takeaways from my study and investigation of this low-income housing mechanism, that we must plan for inclusive and collaborative planning, and we must keep the beneficiaries at this central core of, of such projects. Either it is coming from the public domain, the state, or from the social enterprises, or from the market. Then the shelters is one of the basic component, but facilities, other allied facilities are also very important. We must plan for them as well. Then it is very important that you appoint right people for the right job, and you consider their opinion as well. And the political agendas should be discouraged in the discourse of low income housing program. And we must target the right beneficiaries. We must figure out their down payment and give them longer tenure of mortgages. We must provide them efficient layout, and must collaborate with, private companies, so that initiatives can become from there. And good construction quality must be given to them. And on the this is, the beneficiary perspective, what they want from the government. And being the, core players of the housing, as a housing providers, state, market, and civil society actors must work together, so that, every low income group family can live, in a appropriate and adequate housing unit. Thank you so much. If any questions, I am open to them.
Yes, ma'am. Really very good information. One question is here. How do you rate? One second. One second. One second.
Yeah.
How do you rate community participation for overall management in post occupancy at Safia Home and Ashina Housing? One is private initiative and other one is public. We received one question from one of our participant,
Okay.
madam.
So community participation was not much there, because it was, a project that was led by the authorities. So but the planning of community, that aspect was made, more prominent in case of Safia Homes as compared to Ashiana housing project. Because like I mentioned, that they given, park after every 100 houses in every block. So you are going to give space to the people who are actually living over there. Because if you are living in a small unit, you don't have a lawn, you don't have a garden, you don't have, the outdoor space to enjoy yourself. So uh, uh, and community participation and community environment was more prominent in case of Sakya Homes. So maybe this is because it was led by a social enterprise and NGO who has more connectivity with the people, what they want. So yeah.
Any more question? Yes. Really, thank you, ma'am.